Welcome, Senator.
It's great to be with all of you.
You as well. And we are just getting our live stream going. Welcome to this February 9th meeting of the Montgomery County House Delegation. We are very pleased today to be joined with special guest Senator Chris Van Hollen. And Senator, we'll turn right to you for your comments. And then if you have time, we know things are busy in DC. If you could take some time for questions, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and Delegate Polokovich Carr. Thank you for your leadership as chair of the delegation, and thank all of you for joining this morning. I appreciate the opportunity just to touch base during session, and I always remember fondly my days in Annapolis because you were able to accomplish an awful lot in 90 days. And comparing that to the United States Congress, you are a model of productivity and efficiency. So I want to thank all of you very much. I also want to touch base just to make sure we continue to have an open line of communication both ways. Please feel free to contact me on any federal matter that intersects with your work, and also any constituent matters. We, of course, all share the same constituents, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Ashima Talwar, who is the head of our Maryland office. So just please feel free to reach out anytime to me and our team on any issues. So let me give you a brief update of where things are, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. I mentioned that in this moment, especially, Congress is quite dysfunctional. That's why it was all the more important that during the first 2 years of the Biden administration, we had a very productive 2 years. And I'm not going to go through all the pieces of legislation we passed at the federal level. Many of them are impacting the country positively, including Maryland and Montgomery County. But right now, given the new alignment in the House over the last couple of years, we have been sort of struggling to meet a much lower bar, including simply keeping the government open and passing new budgets for the current fiscal year. So as of today, we're operating under a continuing resolution at the federal level. Our fiscal year began October 1st. And as you know, that means we're sort of operating on automatic pilot at last year's levels of investment spending for federal agencies. And we need to update that because obviously priorities change. As of today, we're operating under a continuing resolution through March 1st for 4 federal agencies and March 8th for all the other federal agencies, meaning we don't have a lot of time to work out the differences between the House and the Senate. I will say on the Senate side, and I serve on the Senate Appropriations Committee, our committee passed all our appropriation bills out of committee on a bipartisan basis. Almost every one of them was unanimous. They were all bipartisan, a very different picture, of course, in the House. But now we finally got an agreement with the House on what we call the top line numbers. We finally agreed on how those reductions will be allocated across different agencies and areas. And so now we're trying to get to work making sure that we get that done. And of course, the federal budget's important for the country. It has a special importance for Maryland and for Montgomery County, given the number of federal agencies that we have. I mean, starting with NIH, where in the new budget we're proposing for the fiscal year we're in, we would increase the investment in NIH by $1 billion. That reaches almost $48 billion federal investment on an annual basis at NIH. Important, of course, again, to the country, but given that their headquarters is right there in Montgomery County, a key part of opportunity economic development in our county. NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, also a federal treasure and playing a very central role now in our economy after the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act. And as we move into this new era of AI, NIST has really become the test bed for many AI related technologies and helping develop sort of guidance. So NIST is playing a major role. And of course, we have many other federal agencies in Montgomery County, from FDA to NOAA to DOE's operations in Germantown, National Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Consumer Product Safety Commission, and very importantly, Walter Reed National Medical Center. Those are some of the big ones, but all of them obviously are important to our country, but also to our economy and providing opportunity to people in Montgomery County. We have lots of all of our neighbors who work at those different federal installations. We are working with many of you and working with the county executive and the county council to bring the new ARPA-H headquarters to Montgomery County. This is a multi-year process, but as you know, Montgomery County is very much in the race to try to bring the headquarters there, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. In terms of earlier measures that were passed by Congress, one of them, of course, was the bipartisan infrastructure modernization bill. That has brought $8 billion over the next 5 years to the state of Maryland. But different jurisdictions within the state are also competing for the competitive grant portion of that. The $8 billion flows to Maryland on a formula basis, but there's also a lot of opportunity for competitive grant seeking measures. And Montgomery County's received $15 million for 13 zero-emission buses and continuing to compete for others. So please keep in mind as we look for the needs, the transportation needs that we face in the county, that there may be opportunities to access federal funds through that competitive grant process. Of course, one of the major provisions in the infrastructure modernization bill was continuing the federal commitment and authorization to WMATA. I want to thank all of you and the state of Maryland who are working with the other jurisdictions that benefit from WMATA for the work that's being done to make sure that they can continue their operations without dramatic cuts to services that impact people throughout the Washington region. And to thank you to Delegate Mark Corman. We've worked closely with him in particular on some of these things at COG, but all of you have been very involved in that. And the purple line, of course, the former governor has left that with huge cost overruns and delays, but the federal government is continuing to participate in that very important project. Let me mention one other area where, together with Senator Cardin and with Congressman Raskin, Trone, and others, we worked very hard to try to make sure that we secure federal funds for worthy local projects. Many of you may know that years ago, Congress abandoned what we now call congressional directed spending earmarks. We revived them with important reforms about 2 or 3 years ago. And we've been successful at securing in the last fiscal year about $10 million for lots of important projects, including, for example, $3 million for the University of Maryland initiative for health computing that is now going to be in Montgomery County. So that was just one example of some of the federal earmark funds that we secured last year. We've got another $10 million worth of projects in the fiscal year 24 bill. Another reason it's important to get that done, because if we don't get the fiscal year 24 bill done, we revert to a full year continuing resolution, and all the important projects we've identified and have targeted for Montgomery County would be gone. Those $10 million of projects. So it's one of another many reasons to make sure that we get a fresh fiscal year appropriations bill. I will. There are a couple other things just in closing. One, as we speak, we are trying to pass the National Security Supplemental. Don't need to go into all the details of that, but one of the provisions in there is $400 million nationally for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. This has been a very important program for protecting houses of worship and other targets of hate, violence, and hate threats. And of course, we've seen an awful rise in hate threats during this very polarized time. We've seen an increase in anti-Semitism. We've seen an increase in Islamophobia. We've seen an increase in anti-Arab American sentiment. So it's very important that we provide these funds to help better protect these areas that are sadly targets of hate violence. Just on the opportunities front going forward, there are a lot of opportunities under the Small Business Administration, small business grants. I chair the Appropriations Subcommittee that funds the Small Business Administration, and Senator Cardin is on the committee, the authorizing committee. So we've worked very hard to expand opportunities for minority-owned businesses, and there are sizable federal funds that can be drawn down for those purposes. And finally, something that I've worked on for a very long time, where Montgomery County has also been a pioneer, which is the idea of a green bank. Montgomery County established a green bank, one of the first jurisdictions in the country to do that. Back at that time, I'd introduced a bill in the House to create a federal green bank. We finally, as part of passing the Inflation Reduction Act, created that national green bank. It's taken some time for EPA to get it up and running, but we expect them to be awarding funds to coalitions that have come together to help accomplish that goal, which is to accelerate the deployment of clean energy, which will help us, of course, address the climate crisis, but also create huge opportunities, job opportunities in this area for people around the country. So let me end there. Thank you again for all that you are doing in Annapolis, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you in our joint efforts for the county and for the state.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much for all that you're doing for Montgomery County and for all the people of Maryland. We so appreciate it. And I appreciate that you opened your comments about the constituent services. I think all of us have stories from over the years of how helpful your office has been on that front. So a big particular thank you there. We do have some members who have questions. We'll start with Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Van Hollen, for all that you do, and for us there in Washington, and also for being here this morning. I know that you did a quick summary of many things that are happening, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but as you know, Maryland applied for some infrastructure money to update and repair and redo the American Legion Bridge, and apparently that fell through, or the request was not granted, I should say. And I don't know if you have any information on that as to, what's going on or whether you can help get that done. I just know that from my constituents' standpoint, that's a very critical project for us to get working on.
Well, Delegate Foley, thank you for all your good work and for raising that issue. It's also a priority of mine, and we're going to continue working with the federal government, to get at least a share of federal funds to match with the state and other efforts to deal with the American Legion Bridge. I mean, we have to. It's a necessary project. It creates a big bottleneck. It's aging. So why don't I make sure that I have my team reach out to you, in the coming days to give you an update and give us an opportunity to look into it even more deeply to see what. But it is a delegation priority, and so we'll get back to you on that.
All right, thank you, Senator.
Thanks.
Recognizing Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for being here and for all your great work over many years on so many important things. I wanted to talk briefly about the offshore wind lease areas. As you know, our office has worked engaged on that. Huge concern about the tiny lease areas that were ultimately awarded and that will go out for bid later next year. And I know there's a plan to continue that dialogue. And I'm just wondering if you can outline both what you see as the possibilities, what the challenges are to essentially get a large amount of what was lease area B or call area B, as well as the potential floating lease areas, which were E and F in the original round. And then if you could talk about, I know there's many people on this call who, very much want Maryland to be the offshore wind hub that we've been trying to set ourselves up for the good union jobs that come with that, as well as the clean energy. And if you just have any advice on how others in the General Assembly can support your efforts, the governor's efforts to really open up enough lease areas to meet our climate and economic goals.
Well, Delegate Charkoudian, first of all, thank you for your laser focus on this issue and for the legislation that you've sponsored your colleagues.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator. I think you got muted inadvertently.
Can you hear me now? All right. Well, I was thanking Delegate Charkoudian for all her good work in this area. And I know all of you are committed to the goal of making Maryland a leader in the deployment of clean energy. And I do want to congratulate all of you and the governor for putting forward very ambitious goals. And we need to make sure that we meet those goals. Part of that is ensuring that there's adequate offshore leasing areas. And as Delegate Charkoudian mentioned, we have been working with the Biden administration. We were able to avert what might have been a bad message by ensuring that federal agencies went back to the drawing board to look at additional leasing areas. They've committed to doing that. They have to deconflict these areas with all sorts of federal and other priorities, Pax River Air Base priorities, other, Coast Guard priorities. But the good news is that, the Biden administration has been working with us at the White House level and making sure that agencies understand that this is an absolute priority to have the leasing areas. Now, obviously, there are other pieces to this, to making sure that Maryland is the offshore wind capital of the country. That includes, I believe, still pending action by the Public Service Commission. I don't know if you have an update on that. There's also, the fact that Ørsted paused for now, but we are hoping that they will renew their vision for offshore wind in Maryland. All of these projects are only able to be economically viable with the federal tax credits that have been available. That's one of the issues, the allocation of those tax credits, one of the issues that was before the Public Service Commission in Maryland. But I'm very pleased that U.S. Wind continues forward with its plans, and we do hope to get Ørsted back on track. And we will continue to work to make sure that there's future offshore wind. We anticipate others will be bidding, at least we hope, on some of the areas that are now available.
Next, Delegate
Thank
Wu.
you.
Thanks.
I thought Delegate Collison is in front of me.
I think she was in the queue, but dropped back out. So we'll go to Delegate Collison. Thank you, Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Delegate Wu. I don't know how my hand got lowered, so I think there was a gremlin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. I add my thanks and admiration to everything that you have done in your role and as our senator. Yesterday, we heard a bill on extending the authority of our Prescription Drug Affordability Board to the commercial market. And one of the issues that comes up is something I know you're working on, which is we've already paid bill. I know it's sort of stuck in the limbo that is, the federal government right now, but can you give us any updates, any potential, any thoughts on how, something like that could come to fruition?
Well, first of all, Delegate Carlson, it's great to see you. Thank you for your leadership on this issue in Maryland. I was pleased to submit testimony in support of the Maryland bill.
Thank you.
Hope you'll be able to get it over the finish line. Before I mention the We Paid Act, I do want to, just again emphasize the big changes that we made to prescription drug pricing for Medicare as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, right? We took action on insulin, and I want to salute all of you at the state level for also taking action to reduce the price of insulin. But we've, as you know, capped it at $35 a month nationally as part of the Medicare program. You probably also saw that just recently the administration has issued sort of bids for the first 10 drugs that would be covered by price negotiations. This is, despite ongoing efforts by the big pharmaceutical companies to tie this up in courts and try to defeat it in the courts, they've not been successful. So we're moving forward, and part of that bill will also, another part will kick in that will cap out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs at $2,000 a year. So lots of really important provisions in that bill for the Medicare program. And I think all of us need to make sure our constituents are aware that those changes came as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, because it was a hard-fought bill. It passed by, I think, the tie-breaking vote cast by the vice president, but it is making a really important difference in people's lives. So, of course, we want to expand we want to reduce drug prices, not only for individuals on Medicare, but everybody. And that's what your efforts are all about in Maryland. And thank you for mentioning the We Paid Act, which, as the title indicates, we want to make sure that, given the fact that federal taxpayers have paid so much in the investment in research and development of drugs that are ultimately developed by pharmaceutical companies, that they shouldn't have to pay twice. I mentioned earlier that just this year, we've gotten the appropriation for the National Institutes of Health up to about $48 billion, right? So those are American taxpayers making that investment. It's a really important investment for all of us in our country, and to develop treatments and cures for diseases, and of course is a global benefit. But we shouldn't have a situation where drugs developed in the US based on those taxpayer dollars are sold here for 5 times, 6 times more than the same drug overseas. So the whole idea of the We Paid Act is to say that with respect to those drugs that are developed in significant part as a result of public taxpayer investment, that we have a board created that would essentially establish the pricing that would allow for a reasonable return. Obviously, a private sector company that's developing drugs has to, be compensated for the investment they make and have a reasonable return, but they should not be allowed to price gouge the American consumer. So we are moving forward with this. It is going to be something that we try to include the next time we have an opportunity here with majorities that would support this kind of action. Right now in this current Congress, as I said, Bonnie, we're just trying to keep the government open. So, but we have got this. We're going to reintroduce it and continue to push for it. And your actions in Maryland can really help lead the way. Something we can point to at the state level that we should adopt nationally. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Collison. And I think for our last question, Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for coming to the delegation meeting. First, for any people who are celebrating Lunar New Year, I just want to say Happy Lunar New Year, the year of dragon, and bring the power and the peace to everyone. So I have one question about the school capital budget. I'm wondering whether from the Congress, you're able to create a dedicated federal school capital funding source. I know a lot of situations, even from Howard County last week, we got a school flooded. We have to close school. And for Montgomery County, we have similar situation. I have a student intern who are compiling all the data for the capital need in the United States. We estimated there are probably around $50 billion we need for deferred maintenance and for new school construction. And at the same time, sometimes I feel the Congress, when they approve funding for war, it comes so easily, like $1 billion, like a dollar. So I just wonder, is there any way, like from our Maryland congressional leadership, say we will create a dedicated school capital funding source, and we can utilize and help the local jurisdiction?
Well, sure, Delegate Wu, and thank you for the question. Thank you for your efforts on this, and happy Lunar New Year to you. Good to be in the year of the dragon. And so this has been a longtime priority of mine as well, from my days in the state legislature, where we all worked to dramatically increase the state school construction fund, and we're successful at expanding it. But I've always believed that the federal government should also support these efforts, which is why I am a co-sponsor, along with Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island, of legislation to do exactly that. We attempted to include that way back in what was called the Build Back Better initiative. The Build Back Better initiative ultimately morphed into what became the Inflation Reduction Act, but a number of priorities that some of us had did not make it into that final bill. But we're going to continue to push on that issue, because, as you say, every child not only should be in a classroom with small class sizes, but also should be in a school building that really meets the purpose of the 21st century, and make sure that every child knows that he or she that they are valued. So I appreciate your efforts. Let's stay in touch. I will say it's been a challenge, even among some Democrats, but especially some of our Republican colleagues have been unwilling to consider this as a part of our federal responsibility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that is the end of questions. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today and being so generous with your time. We are very appreciative, and for all that you and your staff do, and always look forward to you coming each year to brief the delegation.
Well, thank you, and best wishes for the remainder of the session. Maybe hope to get down there at some point, but thank you for what you do, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so colleagues, let me just see if any committee chairs have any announcements about upcoming meetings. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Land Use Committee will meet Monday at noon to consider our final two bills.
Thank you. Any other committee announcements? Delegate Crutchfield?
Yes, the Education, Election, and Housing Committee will meet on Thursday at noon, our usual meeting time and day. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements at this time? Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to state the Metro Washington Area Committee is done for this session, pending any other bills that might come over from Prince George's County. So thank you for all of your effort and your efficiency.
Thank you. And I will say, I think we have the potential still of 4 bills coming over from Prince George's County. We will keep everyone posted on that, and when they are officially in our hands. Otherwise, I think if there's no other business, a reminder, we are taking the delegation photo at 10:45 inside the State House in the main lobby outside the chamber. The stairs that are there heading up to the 2nd floor. That's where we'll convene. If you would like to have a district photo taken, please come earlier, 10:30. We'll take districts first come, first serve once all of their members who wish to be in the photo are there. And Ralph will be taking the photo, so just keep an eye out for him. And I think with that, we are adjourned.